Today, I'm going to talk about 5 advanced chords. I'm going to talk about the augmented chords, diminished, dominant 7, major 7, and sus, a sus chord, S-U-S. As a beginner, I found that these chords were intimidating because I had no idea what they were, and I had no idea what the ratio or the formula was for them, and I would have to look them up every time. Well, over time, if you keep doing that, that's going to tire you out. You don't have to look up these chords. A lot of things in music you do not have to look up. There's almost always a formula or some kind of equation, ratio for things in music. Remember, music is very mathematical. That's why some of the greatest pieces in the world have mathematical perfection to them. So today I'm going to talk about 5 advanced chords. I encourage you to pay attention to these ratios because it's going to save you from looking up. And a lot of my beginners out there, I don't want you to skip over these chords. When you're playing sheet music and you see them, and you're like, oh, that's too intimidating, I'm just going to skip it and do a different chord I know. Don't do that because you're missing out on some very beautiful chords. After today's video, you should never have to look up these advanced chords again. You should be able to just know what the formula is or the ratio and be able to do it. But of course, if you need to, go ahead. Okay, so let's talk about the augmented chord, for example. The augmented chord, you start with your C major position. And for today's video, I'm just going to use C major as our template. I'm not going to talk about the other keys. And we're going to keep it in the major set. Remember, to make a C major chord, it's a 4-3 ratio. So first of all, you have to know that before you can even learn these advanced chords. So for a C major chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's how you build every single major chord on the piano. You always start with your root note. So the root note of a C is a C. The root note of an F major chord is an F. The root note of an E major chord is E. It doesn't matter. So for today, we're just going to use C major position for all of these advanced chords. So for the C major, all you have to do to make it an augmented C chord is just sharpen the 3rd note. See what I did? I made a C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and all I did was sharpen the 3rd note. I'm just sharpening G sharp. That's all I did to make this an augmented chord. What's the ratio for this? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So instead of a 4-3 ratio, it's a 4-4 ratio. There it is. That's how you build an augmented chord. The next one is a diminished chord. How you make a diminished was start with your C major position, flatten your 2nd and your 3rd note. Once again, flatten your 2nd and your 3rd note. Let's find out what the ratio is here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So remember with augmented, we went 4, 4, and with diminished, you went 3, 3. Remember, this applies to any key on the piano. But before you can find out what these are, just use the key as your major key in the starting position and then count back. So you flatten your 2nd and 3rd note, diminished. The next one we'll talk about is a dominant 7 chord. This one's trickier. If you watch my scales video on my channel, I talk about how scales are built. So for example, with a C major scale, you need to know how this is built before you can know how to make a dominant 7. How do you build a scale of C major? 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. This is a C major scale. Because I used a 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1 formula. So what is the 7th of the scale? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In order to make this a dominant 7 chord, you do this, C-E-G, and add that 7. Now this is your first chord that I've showed you that actually has 4 keys you play. The other ones obviously had only 3 keys you're playing, the augmented and the diminished. This one's unique because you have a 4th note. This is actually one of the most beautiful chords. In fact, all these advanced chords are beautiful in their own way. But this is a very common one, this dominant 7. Now, this is very important in the video. Make sure you don't get this messed up. Don't confuse a dominant 7 with a major 7. This is the next chord. What that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's actually literally telling you play the 7th of the scale. C major 7 scale. So this is a C major 7 scale. This is a C dominant 7 scale. So it would, on the sheet music, it would look like this, C7, and this would look like C major 7. Once again, this would be C7, and this would be C major 7. It's important not to get those confused. As a beginner, I got confused all the time by that. So, but after today, you shouldn't have to. Last chord, pretty unique. It's called a sus chord, S-U-S. This is some very heavenly sounding chords, celestial, religious, Christmas sounding chords. Very, very beautiful chord. Now this is what's called a Sus2 chord. So to build a Sus2 chord, what you're going to do is start with your C major, and maybe in a different way, instead of starting with the C major position, just start with your root note and then you do your counts. So let's do our counts. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's unique. It's a 2-5 ratio from your starting point. Once again, if you were going to build a C sus2 chord, you start with your root note, count 2, 1, 2, then count 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Congratulations, sus2 chord. How do you make a sus4 chord? Because often in sheet music, you'll see those together. Sometimes you'll see a sus2 pop up and then a sus4. It's just how it goes. So how do you build a sus4, which is this? Now you flip those numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. So instead of it being 2, 5, you're doing 5, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. So there you go. Those are the 5 advanced chords. If I had a video like this when I was a beginner, it would have saved me a lot of hassle, because a lot of times I would skip chords because I wasn't interested in playing them, because it would take too much work to look them up, and I would just skip them. But I was actually missing out because some of these chords are so beautiful. From personal experience, for example, diminished chords I've seen a lot in jazz, very beautiful. Dominant 7s are all over the place in blues routines, boogie woogie, just American pop music. Major 7s also are beautiful, but a lot of times as a leading voice. And sus2s in very spiritual music, I've seen those too. I haven't seen as many augmented chords. However, they are exciting to play on the rare occasion that you do play them. That's today's video. Leave comments, leave questions. Please subscribe. Thank you for joining me.